Hey everyone, Vincenzo Calla here. Welcome to episode 7 of Let's Discuss Politics. Today I'm glad to be joined by the Conservative MP for Elgin, Middlesex, London, Karen Vecchio. Karen was born and raised in rural southern Ontario. She was first elected to be the MP for Elgin, Middlesex, London in 2015, followed by 2019 and 2021. She has served on many parliamentary committees during her time as an elected official, and until the recent election, she served as the Deputy House Leader for the official opposition. Thank you, Karen, for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, and I'm really excited to be on your show today.
It's great to have you, especially after the election. I'm seeing who wants to join, and it's great to have so many different people from so many different parties come on and join me and discuss their election results and discuss what they're looking forward to and discuss their political history. So thanks for joining me. We're going to start with our first segment, which is called Karen's Story, where we will talk about your political history. So the first question is, when did you first get involved in politics?
Well, it's one of those things is I probably didn't even know I was involved in politics because I started really at a very young age. My family has always been involved in politics, and my grandfather many years ago, so back in the 70s, was the bagman. So did a lot of fundraising for the MP from Elgin, Middlesex, or from Elgin, who was John Wise at that time. And I've been involved since, truly when I was 14 years old, I got my first membership to the YPC back in 1985, and I've been involved ever since. And as I've grown up, as I've aged, I've gotten more involved. So, I used to help on political campaigns, but then about 15, 20 years ago, I got more involved at the grassroots level of being on an EDA. And then when it came into actually running and becoming a member of parliament, that didn't really change until 2014 when I started actually looking at a leadership role. I was really happy in the roles that I had working for the current MP and doing work like that as a board of director.
Well, it's so interesting to see how everybody gets to, especially current sitting MPs and former MPs. It's interesting to see how people get there, because I've had some people on the show who say, hey, I was never in politics, but I decided I was tired of, it's the story, especially in the past years. People are tired of government. People are tired of, liberals are tired of conservatives. Conservatives are tired of liberals. Yeah. People are tired of the different parties that are running, and they decide to take a step forward, even though they've never been in politics. And then there's some people like you and people like me who really got involved at a young age and are starting to get involved, and people like you who started at the level of just volunteering and then went on and became an MP. Now you're sitting here.
Absolutely. And something, it wasn't just at the federal level, but I've worked in many municipal elections, provincial elections, even student council elections. If we want to go back to the good 80s, there was times I've always been involved in when it comes to leadership. So I'm really proud to where this has landed me, but I really never thought that when I was 14 years old and bought my first YPC membership, that, years later, I'd be the MP.
That's very interesting for sure. We're going to go on to the next question, which is, why did you decide to run for the position you want to hold, which is the MP for Elgin, Middlesex, London?
Well, I think, as I said, until about 2014, I really never saw myself as that leader, as that person who should be the MP or the mayor or the MPP. I never really saw that, but I knew that I was a very important part of that leadership team, especially being the executive assistant to the former MP. But how did I decide that this was the time and that I was going to get in there? It just kind of the way it rolled out. The member of parliament, who was Joe Preston, I had worked with him for 11 years. So we worked through, the global economic crisis. We worked through a lot of things within our community. And I really loved the federal politics. I really loved that side. The provincial politics, of course, we had some really great MPPs here. We had Steve Peters and followed by Jeff Urick. And by the time that I was really involved in politics, I didn't think about going into municipal politics. I really hadn't thought about that. I was much more involved in more party politics than individual politics. So when I decided, it was with a lot of support from my family, from members of the Liberal Party, which is funny, members from other parties also saying, hey, Karen, I think it's your time, especially with the support that I got from Joe Preston and my husband and other leaders within the party itself.
Well, that's a great story. I mean, like I said before, everybody has their own story that they come in and they decide to run for the role that they want to run in for each of their own ideas and different, I guess, feelings that they have. And it's so interesting to see how everybody gets to one way, even though they may have taken many different steps to get to that role, such as yourself being an MP, you got to it this way, whereas other people may never have thought about being an MP, or just like you didn't even think about being an MP, but then it came up, and it's just the way things work. And it's just so interesting to see how what brings us where. And
Absolutely. And the one thing I think is because I was so involved in the constituency level, I understood how legislation impacted Canadians. So actually, when I was working that front counter, I could see when there was changes made, what would the impact be, or what should we do? So I think for those 11 years, I was so engaged in the federal level of politics that that's where I wanted to go. I could see that there was issues with immigration, with Canada Revenue Agency, and I felt that I was able to offer some solutions. So that was pretty much the perfect for me was federal over provincial or municipal politics.
That's very interesting. And we're going to go into the next segment, which is called Serving as an Elected Official, where we'll talk about your experiences and achievements as an elected official. So the first question is, what is your favorite part about serving your community as an elected official?
Well, I think the one thing I recognize is how this community is very diverse. I mean, I've got the city of London, which has a population of over 400,000, yet I have many, many hamlets throughout the county of Elgin and within Thames Centre as well. We have smaller communities. And what I really like about it, it's the people. It's the people that you meet each and every day. Sometimes it's that person who's got an invention that they think would be really, really great. Sometimes it's a person who, I have a good idea for our community, how we can build on this. Families who want to come in and help support immigrant families coming into this community. Those are some of the greatest things. And it's all about the people. It's all about those people that want to be leaders within their own community and help out. And so I'd say my number one thing here is the people that I serve, is just the diversity of opinion and the fact that I always think that together we always come up with better options.
Well, that's so true. You're so right about that. I mean, being elected as an MP, you are representing the big number is 110,000. You're 110,000 or so people in your riding. You're serving them and bringing their needs to Parliament Hill whenever question period, and whenever you're in committees, and you're just bringing their experiences, their ideas, their concerns. And that really is what the House of Commons is: 338 people that are representing the 38 million or so Canadians, representing them and their needs. And that's why you're elected.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it should be too, right? It's we're bringing, I'm the voice of the people that I represent. And, there's lots of people just like me that live in this community as well. And there's a lot of people that have brought different experiences. And so really it's about communicating and ensuring that those values, those suggestions, those solutions are brought forward. So whether it's in the question period or whether it's writing a letter to the minister saying, hey, we could jig this so it actually works better. Those are the types of things I have the opportunity to do.
Exactly. And that works really well with our next question, which is, what is your favorite achievement as an elected official?
Gosh, it's interesting because I kind of every day is a new day. But the one thing that I think I've really achieved and I'm really proud of is the ability to work across party lines. And one thing that brings me is a lot of satisfaction was like thinking of the work that I did last year. There was a program called Measures Against Prostitution Initiative. And what it was doing was trying to help those women who have been sex trafficked, exploited, trying to help those women escape that and ensuring that we have a plan and a path forward. And so last year, I was able, although the government wasn't responding at that time, I was able to bring all of the opposition parties together. We wrote a letter, we did a media conference, we did things to push an important issue for Canadian women. And a lot of times you're not going to see a conservative-led opposition event. So it was myself, it was the NDP, it was the Bloc, it was the Green Party, and that was us all working together. So I think that's something I'm really, really proud of, is I recognize that there are a lot of issues that we all really care about, and trying to find that common denominator that brings us together. I think that's something a lot of times I'm able to achieve is just to kind of say, what is the thing that we have in common? What are some of our goals and how can we achieve those? And I think together, when we all voice our opinions, especially when you're in opposition and you're seeing, an NDP and a Conservative coming together, it proves that there really is, there is a general consensus. So let's do this. And so that, I think, was one of my biggest achievements, was just the ability to work with others. And I saw that in my work as the chair of Status of Women as well, as that ability to work with all parties and getting work done.
And that's kind of that unseen sort of side of Parliament that we don't see in the media. Like, we always watch the TV and we watch conservatives versus liberals. We see, I don't know, Pierre Polyev versus Angus versus
Yeah.
Freeland, but we always see that side, but we never see the parliamentary committee side, or the side where you work across party lines. And that's just something super important for Canadians to realize does happen. We're,
Yeah.
as fractured as it may seem, on TV, that's not everything. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes, and elected officials like yourself and so many other people work together behind the scenes.
And that's so true, because I think at the committee work, that is where you need to get work done. That's where you're writing reports, you're asking witnesses, and then at the end of the day, there's a report that's going to be written. Is it going to be unanimous, or are there going to be dissenting reports? That is the choice after, but we can work together for better solutions. And you're right. I think a lot of times you're going to see the theater of Parliament, because it's going to be what's the hot topic of that day, or what did somebody say? Those hot button issues are always important, but there is a lot of work that gets done amongst members.
Exactly. And that's something really to think about. As we'll leave it at that for that segment. And we'll go into the next segment, which is called Politics Are All Around Us, where we'll talk about the world of politics around us. So bring it into the world right now. So who is, or who was, another politician that inspires you?
There's many that inspire me, but I believe that one of the person who had the greatest influence was Joe Preston, who is the member of Parliament for Elgin, Middlesex, London. We talk about mentorship, and for me, being a woman in politics, mentorship is a really important thing. But I always say it doesn't have to be of the same gender. So Joe Preston was my mentor going into it. He was the person who has really assisted me on saying, hey, just always remember, do what is right, and sometimes, and always remember, the people that you're serving, they're your customers. Your job is to serve them. And so he is probably one of the most inspirational persons that I have in my life when it comes to that. But I also look at people outside of politics who have inspired me. And there's many people like that within our communities across the world, people that inspire you when you see that they're doing things for the greater good. And really, that's the type of community I live in. And that's the type of work that I want to do.
And especially as we talk about mentorship and just seeing people that inspire us, it's just so important, especially people like yourself, members of Parliament. It's good to sort of bring it into focus and just look around and say, hey, what is somebody doing that I really like that maybe I didn't think of, or what did they do that I didn't think of? Or it's just that general idea, and maybe what did someone do that I didn't like that I can learn from, or something like that. So that really is a thing that goes into our next question really well, which is, what do you think is an issue that needs to be focused on more?
An issue that needs to be focused on more. Something, I think what we're really seeing right now, we talk a lot about freedoms, but we have to talk about individuals, like, the individual thought. What impacts me is very different than what impacts you. And it depends what region you're from. It depends on your sexuality. It depends on a whole bunch of things. We talk a lot about having a GBA lens, so the gender-based analysis lens. But we need to just do more than that. We need to look at how is somebody impacted differently that lives in a population of 400 people than somebody that lives in downtown Toronto. So I think we really need to step back and say, hey, what is the role of the government? Are we picking winners and losers? And are we providing the opportunities for Canadians to be successful in their own right, regardless of where they live? So I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I see. I do see the challenges for people that live in small communities versus those people that might live in the City of London. I see some of those challenges. Sometimes it's getting to your job. Sometimes it could be a variety of different things, poverty issues, all of those things. So those are things that I think we really need to focus on, is what are the policies that the federal government make that impact Canadians and could have a very, very positive or negative effect, depending on who they are, where they live, and how they're represented.
Well, that's especially something that we saw a lot of this year, because a lot of the government programs and a lot of the government basically policies and all that, where everybody, this is what's going to happen. But then we also notice that everybody has their own story, and that's just something to also remember when you're forming policy and when you're creating programs, and just sort of thinking of how can we benefit more people than we possibly think we could. And that's pretty much it.
And I think really for all of us, I bet you the majority of Canadians believe about 85 to 90% of the same thing. So we really do. it's that stuff that we have to balance. Those things on, economics, where being a conservative, economics is a big part of my platform and our platform moving forward. How do you have a strong economy and a strong government working together for Canadians? And those are things that are really important to me. And I recognize the impacts to my constituents are very different depending on where they live. So we need to look at things like that as well.
Especially, and I'm gonna leave it on that, but especially something for people to think about the difference between rural and urban communities, which especially was a big issue in this election. And we'll leave it there for now. And
sure,
maybe we can talk about it another time in another interview.
Sure.
But for sure, that's definitely something that needs to be focused on from all parties, rural versus urban. And that's pretty much it. So thank you, Karen, for joining me today. That's all for today. If you like today's interview, make sure to check out my other interview with Karen on Instagram for Top 5 in 5. If you're watching it at the premiere date, it'll be coming out on Friday. So to stay updated, make sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at VC Productions 25. Check my website out at vincenzocalla.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, and choose to get notifications here on YouTube. Let's Discuss Politics is a VCalla production. So until the next video, I'm Vincenzo Calla, signing out.